welcome to today's auction sale. We have 3 properties on offer. That is Kajiado Kitengela, stroke 73042. Anyone interested in that particular property? No. Gong Gong, 37632, Laser area, Ongata Rongai. Do we have anyone interested in that particular property?
Auctioning of properties has been Joseph Gikonyo's bread and butter for the last 25 years.
35.5.
Today he has 3 properties within the outskirts of Nairobi going under the hammer.
If we have interested bidders for that particular property, let me have your bids, please.
Many of us use the phrase, it goes to the highest bidder metaphorically just about every day. Well, here it is used in the literal sense. We witnessed 2 bidders go neck to neck for a property located in Kiambu's Kahawa Wendani area.
We have an opening bid of 30 million shillings with bidder number 141. Do I get a higher offer? 31 million shillings with bidder number, can I see your bidding number? Bidder number 142. Does it get any higher? 33 million shillings, bidder number 141. Do we get a response from bidder number 142? Yes. How much? 34 million shillings, bidder number 142. 35 million shillings, bidder number 141. 35.5 million shillings, bidder number 142.
Auctioneers are a dreaded lot. Oftentimes they remind us there are dire consequences for defaulting on credit facilities, whether from the formal market or the informal market. Unfortunately, the state of the housing market in Kenya over the last 2-3 years has translated into an extremely busy season for auctioneers.
Below target occupancy rates, landlords compelled to slash rent in a bid to retain tenants, and auctions left, right and center. This is the sad state of affairs currently witnessed in segments of the housing market in Kenya's main urban centers. The Kenya Bankers Association has been tracking the average price of housing units in the country from as far back as 2013. The association's Housing Price Index helps put into perspective the situation on the ground. Starting the first quarter of 2018, the index has been on a general decline, falling from a peak of 121.29 to a low of 118.76 at the close of 2019. Jared Osoro serves as the head of research at the Kenya Bankers Association and argues that the housing market is in the process of correcting itself.
For 4 consecutive quarters, we've seen negative prices. And that to us is a clear signal of a correction that is happening in the market. And therefore, speaking to how demand and supply dynamics have adjusted in the circumstances making the market start looking downward.
In our status of the built environment report for the last half of last year, this came out predominantly that there's a glut in the market in terms of an oversupply. So demand and supply are not matching up in this bracket of houses, which are ranging from middle income to high income. There are some areas that came out in that report that houses are not moving, and they are in the higher income, Kitusuru, Lower Kabete, they're not moving. When you look at Kileleshwa, Kilimani, there's a large glut of those houses.
In essence, what we are witnessing in the housing market with prices cooling off after years of a steady rise is a reflection of an imbalance between demand and supply. In a situation where we have excess supply, then prices generally begin to stagnate and in extreme cases, decline. Available data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics gives an indication of what could have happened around the supply of residential property. Between 1999 and 2003, an average of 1,051 new residential buildings were completed in Kenya's major towns. This, however, began to change in 2004 when the figure grew to 1,700, and from that point, it steadily grew to touch a high of 10,300 units in 2018. Gikonyo Gitonga is a board director at the Kenya Property Developers Association and serves as a member of the Institute of Surveyors in Kenya. He argues that this trend is a reflection of the chase for high returns that investors were raking in back then from the real estate market.
if you look back to 2003, we had not had a lot of property developments. So in 2003, 2004, during just the beginning of the, when Mwai Kibaki was the president, there was a real huge development craze. And developers made very good profits. Now the margins have become thin.
This upsurge in development of residential property was anchored on the fact that Kenya experiences considerable rural to urban migration, which is reported to have created a significant housing deficit. The World Bank, in its 2017 Kenya Economic Update, estimated that Kenya had an accumulated housing deficit of 2 million units and that the country needed 244,000 housing units annually to keep up with the soaring demand against an annual construction of less than 50,000 units. These sentiments echoed those of the Center for Affordable Housing in Africa, which in its 2016 study themed Understanding Kenya's Housing Finance Market, estimated that Kenya required construction of 132,000 housing units annually to meet the demand created by the rising number of urban dwellers.
There is no empirical evidence to support the claim that there is a shortage of 250,000 units in Kenya. And that figure surprisingly doesn't change. We've been talking about the 250,000 for quite some time now. I think what needs to be done is a study to understand the housing needs, supply, demand factors, so that you can come up with a figure that can be used as a basis for investment in the market. But a blanket figure of 250,000, whereas it gives the impression that there is a huge undersupply and opportunity for investment, that may not be necessarily true.
It would seem that for the better part, decisions made around Kenya's property market were not based on a fundamental understanding of how the market dynamics actually work. So what this did was to set the stage for the situation we are presently confronting, where there is a glut in the market and prices are softening.
The Institute of Economic Affairs is a policy think tank based in Nairobi, which in 2017 published a document interrogating the state of the housing market and offered options on the policy approach to be taken going forward. The Chief Executive Officer, Kwame Owino, argues that there was a fundamental flaw in some of the expectations held by property developers in the country.
The housing market in Kenya has been on what I'd, for the lack of a better word, call a bull run for almost 12-15 years. And for a long time, and perhaps the media should also have been cautious with this, everybody gave you the impression that if you buy a house, it will always appreciate. That's nonsense according to standard economics, but for some reason it was accepted.
That assumption of property prices going up continuously has been embedded. Now, you have to take that on the back of the fact that, we see quite a bit of speculation. We live in a market where we don't need to see an infrastructure development for the price of land to appreciate. You just need to hear people speculate that a road or a railway is going to be built in a certain address, and you see the property around that region appreciating substantially.
When you look at the why people invest in property in Kenya, is that sometimes they never even look at the yield. It's an emotional way of investing in property. And you'll find that the rentals you're getting are not matching what you're paying as a mortgage.
Property developers not only erred in assuming that prices would always be trending upwards, but also in what the Kenyan market could actually afford for the housing units. In its April 2017 Kenya Economic Update, which focused on the housing market in the country, the World Bank noted that only 10.2% of urban households in Kenya could afford the cheapest newly constructed house in 2015 at a cost of 1.7 million shillings, painting a picture of the state of incomes in a market where housing prices were rising to stratospheric highs. On the ground, the numbers were more startling. According to a 2016 study by the Financial Sector Deepening Kenya, the Central Bank of Kenya and the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, 5 out of every 10 working Kenyans have a monthly income which is below 7,500 shillings, while another 4 out of every 10 have an income which lies between 7,500 and just 30,000 shillings.
I think housing prices went far ahead of the incomes that Kenyans have. I mean, your average income in Kenya is about 15,000 shillings per month, right? Here we were selling houses in Kenya, in Nairobi, that are more expensive than real estate in Tokyo and New York. That definitely was out of kilter.
The low levels of income are also reflected in the rent paid by tenants in Kenya's urban centers. Data from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics published in the 2015-2016 Household Budget Survey shows that almost 70% of the country's urban dwellers pay rent that is below 3,000 shillings, with another 25% paying rent that lies between 3,000 shillings and 10,000 shillings. Only 2.3% of the country's urban dwellers who are tenants pay rent that is above 20,000 shillings every month. The only way the masses would be able to afford their houses would be through mortgage facilities. Unfortunately, mortgages have for the better part been so highly priced that they were only accessible to high-income individuals in the economy.
When you look at the mortgages, you only have about 26,000 mortgages. The rest of the people are buying through savings or cooperative SACCOs.
In the housing sector, we all know what the challenges are. One is the access to finance and costly finance, so people cannot afford to take out mortgages to buy houses. And two is actually the general cost of housing, particularly in urban areas, where housing in Nairobi particularly tends to be very expensive because of the cost of land.
A study published by the World Bank in 2017 revealed that the average mortgage facility in Kenya stands at about 8.3 million shillings. The study revealed that the cheapest available residential property at 1.7 million shillings would require an income of at least 53,000 shillings every month to be able to service the monthly payment of 21,000 shillings for a 15-year loan at 14% per annum. It is this cocktail of high-cost credit, high property prices and over-ambitious expectations on what the present income levels can absorb that have put the housing market in its present state, with auctions becoming the norm rather than the exception. In the present state of affairs, however, even auctioneers are facing challenges, with properties put on auction failing to attract buyers who are willing and able to take them up.
We have a bid of 35.5 million shillings, and I now ask the bank representative whether that is acceptable. Yes, it is. So for the first time I'm going at 35.5 million shillings to bidder number 142. Second time I'm almost going to bidder number 142 at 35.5 million shillings. And third time I'm gone to bidder number 142 for 35.5 million shillings. Congratulations. We shall sign the memorandum of sale with you shortly.
Joseph Gikonyo says that in the 2 decades he has been in the auctioning business, the going has never been this tough.
Given the current state of the economy, buyers are few and far between. We have a lot of high-quality properties which in the past would attract a lot of competition in our auction halls. But like you saw today, we only had 2 bidders. Such a property, believe you me not, 3 years ago would have attracted scores of buyers and would have ended up getting well over 40 million. Yes, but you saw for yourself, the turnout is at an all-time low. 2 out of 3 properties did not sell, and even the one that sold, we only had 2 bidders, and they basically bought it at more or less what the for sale value was.
Part of the challenge in the sale of properties at an auction lies in the legal provisions around the rules of the game, which effectively set the floor regarding the minimum price at which properties can be sold at.
The Land Act 2012 is very clear. You cannot sell a property through an auction at figures below 75% of the market value. So essentially 75% of the market value is the forced sale value. And that is normally indicated in the valuation report. So you're not allowed to sell below that for sale value.
This valuation report you're talking about?
Yes.
How recent should it be?
The valuation report is not supposed to be older than 1 year prior to the auction. Okay. If it is, then the auction is null and void. It can be nullified through court.
Analysts argue, however, that the state of the housing market reflects the general state of the economy, which has been broadly adverse for a number of years now. They say the rampant closure of businesses and subsequent layoffs have been a major catalyst for the slowdown in the housing market.
The property market and the construction industry at large is very reflective of what's happening in the broader economy because of the strong linkages it has. It has linkages to households because, you know, the uptakers are households. It has strong linkage to industry, be it manufacturing, be it steel, cement and those other things. And you can actually relate that to the performance of those particular sectors. You must have seen companies in that segment of the market that have been thriving over time, that are basically looking at a market that's not just local but regional, having challenges. Therefore, it simply points to the fact that some of those companies were not operating at full capacity. And when a company is not operating at full capacity, what's the issue? The issue is demand.
In the economy, one of the biggest contributors to the economy is government spending. And if the government is spending but not paying their suppliers, then we have a slowing of money circulating into the economy. So the pending bills is a major issue, and that has caused a lot of traders, a lot of business people to be distressed. When you look at the auctions that are taking place, it is not based, it's not just people who are defaulting on mortgages, it is people who have pledged their properties for as security.
So now that the housing market is caught in this present situation, what lies ahead and what can property developers do to ensure they mitigate the adverse effects of the market downturn?
Now is a good time to start having a conversation. If we cannot meet, if we cannot figure out the demand to meet the supply, then maybe it's a good time to start talking about repurposing some of these buildings. It's to look at actually what the need is in the market. If the need in the market is for example, small clinics, can you repurpose a small residential apartment building into a clinic facility? Yes, you can. You'd have to perhaps do some intensive installations of, for example, mechanical, electrical systems, but you could repurpose it to meet the actual market need. You could also look at things like student housing. Do you have an apartment block that's near an educational institution and the students don't have access to housing? How do you repurpose that building, perhaps changing a 3-bedroom unit into an actual sort of a dormitory setting where you have, 4 students to a room and then they have a shared common facility?
I think there's no silver bullet here. I think the KMRC is an important input into this equation, because if it enables the tenure to be lengthened, then of course that makes it easier for people to meet their regular obligations with the financials of those assets. But I think the crux of the matter lies in the cost of the property that's coming into the market. Because even if the tenure is long, if what is coming to the market is almost unaffordable, then you've not addressed the problem.
No one quite knows just how far the housing market is still from fully correcting itself. The consensus, however, seems to be that we still have not yet reached that point where the demand for the top and mid-tier segments of the market equals the available supply. The government has now embarked on an ambitious affordable housing program through which it seeks to offload an additional 500,000 housing units into the market by the close of 2022, targeting low-income earners. Only time will tell what the impact of this program will have on Kenya's housing market in the long term. Julians Amboko, NTV.